The wind moved slowly across the empty plain as if it remembered something the world had tried to forget. Dust lifted in thin silver lines around broken stones where a throne once stood. No banners. No guards. No voices. Only silence that felt older than memory. Far below that silence, hidden where sunlight had not touched for centuries, something waited. Not gold. Not a crown. Not a weapon. A diary. Sealed. Unopened. Untouched by history books that claimed to know everything. And the person who would find it was never meant to be there. Erilyn Voss never searched for legends. She searched for quiet places where noise could not reach her thoughts. She drove across the American Southwest in a faded blue truck that rattled like it carried too many years. Highways stretched ahead in long patient lines. Gas stations glowing under tired neon. Roadside diners where coffee tasted burnt but honest. Waitresses who called everyone honey without asking questions. She liked places where strangers did not try to know her story. Places where nobody remembered what she used to study. What she used to believe. What she lost. Maps covered the passenger seat. Old survey maps. Archaeological sketches. Notes copied from forgotten libraries. Scraps of history most people would never notice. Not because she chased treasure, but because she once believed truth mattered. And truth had disappointed her in a very public way. 3 years earlier. A discovery she helped announce had spread across news screens and university halls. They called it revolutionary. They called it proof of something ancient and powerful. Then it collapsed. One missing detail. One error hidden inside excitement. And the world decided she was careless. Phones stopped ringing. Invitations stopped arriving. Colleagues spoke her name softly like it might stain their careers. Since then she traveled alone. From abandoned forts to silent mining towns. From dried riverbeds to museums nobody visited anymore. She searched for something small. Something quiet. Something no one could twist into spectacle again. She told herself she was finished with history that tried to be important. Then the letter arrived. No return address. No stamp from any city she recognized. Only her name written in careful uneven ink. Inside waited a single photograph. Black and white. Edges worn thin by time or by hands that carried it far. A stone platform stood in the center of empty land. And behind it, half swallowed by shadow, the shape of a throne carved from dark rock. On the back of the photograph, 5 words written slowly. Beneath this, the truth still breathes. No signature. No explanation. Nothing to prove it was real. She almost threw it away at a gas station outside Flagstaff. The trash can lid already open. The future already deciding to stay ordinary. But something about the throne felt wrong in a quiet way. Not ancient like museum glass and guided tours. Ancient like something hidden on purpose. Something the world agreed not to mention. 2 days later she was driving west. The road narrowed until pavement became gravel. Gravel became dust. Dust became a path that looked more like memory than direction. Her phone lost signal hours earlier. The radio whispered only static and distant storms. Mountains rose along the horizon like dark waves frozen in time. When the truck finally stopped, it was not because she found certainty. It was because the path simply ended. She stepped into heat that pressed gently against her skin. The air smelled of stone and distance and sunburned silence. No buildings. No fences. No sound of engines or people. Only the throne. It rose from the earth exactly as the photograph promised. Cracked by years. Weathered by wind. Half buried in drifting sand. Yet still shaped for power. Still waiting as if someone might return. Erilyn felt something unfamiliar move inside her chest. Not excitement. Something quieter. Something closer to fear. Forgotten places rarely forget alone. She walked toward it slowly. Boots sinking into soft dust. Each step louder than it should have been in so much open space. The throne was carved from a single slab of dark stone. No symbols. No language. No carving to tell the world who ruled there. Which made it stranger. Because power almost always leaves a signature. She circled it once, then again, searching for tool marks or hidden seams. Anything that explained why someone sent her here. Nothing answered. Only wind brushing across empty land. Only sunlight sliding lower across stone. She almost laughed at herself. Another empty promise. Another road ending in silence. Then the ground shifted beneath her foot. Not enough to fall. Just enough to feel wrong. She knelt slowly, brushing sand aside with careful fingers. Grains caught beneath her nails. Heat rising from the surface. Stone met her touch. Smooth. Flat. Different from the rough earth around it. A slab. Her pulse did not race. It slowed. The way it does when truth finally enters the room. It took nearly an hour to clear the sand. Her hands turned red and raw. Sweat fell into dust and vanished instantly. Edges appeared. Straight lines shaped by intention. A door hidden beneath the throne. Sealed so carefully that wind and centuries guarded it better than locks. Every instinct shaped by disappointment told her to stop. To walk back to the truck. To let mystery remain buried where it could not hurt her again. But curiosity is a quiet gravity. And some questions feel personal even before we know why. A narrow opening showed along one side of the slab. Too precise to be natural. She slid her fingers inside. Pulled gently. For a moment nothing moved. Then stone shifted. Heavy. Reluctant. Like it had waited a very long time for permission. Cool air rose from the darkness below. Air untouched by sun. Carrying a faint scent of paper and age. A staircase descended into shadow. No sound. No light. Only depth. She sat back on warm sand. Heart steady but thoughts turning slowly. Someone built this. Someone sealed it. Someone wanted it hidden. And someone wanted her to find it. That last truth unsettled her most. Because history does not send invitations. People do. She looked across the empty horizon, half expecting another figure watching from far away. Nothing moved. Only wind tracing circles through dust. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. Finally she stood. If this was another mistake, she would face it. Better than wondering for the rest of her life. She returned to the truck. Opened the glove box. Took out a small flashlight. Checked the batteries twice with careful habit. The sun hovered lower now, turning the plain gold and quiet, as if the world itself held its breath. When she stepped onto the staircase, sound changed instantly. Outside wind disappeared, replaced by deep stillness, the kind found in caves and forgotten tunnels, where even thoughts seem louder. Each step downward felt like moving through layers of time. 10 steps. 20. 30. Air grew cooler. Thicker. Carrying that faint scent again. Paper. Her grip tightened around the flashlight. At the bottom, the beam revealed a small stone chamber. No treasure. No statues. No decoration of any kind. Only a single pedestal waiting in the center. And resting on it. A book. Dark cover. Edges wrapped in thin metal. A seal pressed across the front. Unbroken after centuries of silence. Dust covered the floor and walls. Yet the pedestal remained clean. As if the room itself protected what rested there. Erilyn did not move at first. Because the silence felt watchful. Not threatening. But aware. She stepped closer. The seal carried a symbol she had never seen. Not in any culture. Not in any archive. Not in any memory from years of study. Which meant only one thing. This was never meant to be found. Her breathing slowed. A strange calm settling through old doubts. For the first time in years. She did not feel like someone chasing truth. She felt like truth had been waiting for her. Her fingers hovered above the diary. Close enough to feel cold metal without touching it. If she opened the seal, everything could change. Her past. Her name. Maybe even the story history tells about power and silence. Or it could be nothing. Another illusion dressed as meaning. Her voice barely formed a whisper. Why me? The chamber offered no answer. Only stillness. Only the sealed diary beneath a forgotten throne. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of every road that led here, every mistake, every year spent searching for something honest. When her eyes opened again, they were steady. Her hand moved forward, and stopped, because a sound drifted down from the staircase above. Faint, slow, unmistakable. Footsteps. Someone else had come. And suddenly the question was no longer what the diary contained, but who had been waiting for her to find it. Who sent the photograph? And what secret inside that sealed book was powerful enough to remain buried for centuries, yet dangerous enough that someone followed her into the dark? The flashlight trembled slightly in her hand. Not from fear. From knowing. This was the moment everything begins. And once the seal breaks, nothing in the world above that forgotten throne will ever feel the same again. The footsteps above did not hurry. They moved with careful patience, as if the person descending the staircase already understood what waited below, as if time itself had slowed to listen. Erilyn remained still beside the pedestal, her hand hovering inches from the sealed diary, every sense alert, every breath quiet. Light from her flashlight stretched across the stone walls and trembled slightly. Not from weakness, from the weight of being witnessed. Another step echoed downward. Then another. The sound was steady, measured, unafraid. Whoever approached did not expect danger, which meant they expected her. Erilyn lowered her hand slowly, not touching the seal. Not yet. Her thoughts moved quickly through possibilities. A landowner, a historian, someone who had followed her truck across the desert, or the person who sent the photograph. The last idea settled deepest, cold and certain. The footsteps stopped halfway down the staircase. Silence returned, thick and waiting. For a long moment nothing happened. Then a voice drifted through the darkness. Soft, older, calm in a way that felt practiced. You found it. Not a question. A quiet confirmation. Erilyn turned toward the staircase but kept the flashlight low. She did not want to blind the stranger. She did not want to show fear either. Who are you? Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. A pause followed. Not hesitation. Consideration. Someone who has been waiting longer than you can imagine. The figure stepped into the edge of the light. Not threatening. Not dramatic. Just a person shaped by years. Tall but slightly bent at the shoulders. Hair silver and loose around a weathered face. Clothes simple like someone who cared more about movement than appearance. Eyes that studied everything without rushing. Erilyn felt an unexpected shift inside her chest. Not fear. Recognition without memory. You sent the photograph. Yes. Why? Because you were the only one who would come alone. The answer landed heavier than she expected. Most people bring cameras, teams, announcements. The stranger continued softly. You brought silence. Erilyn did not reply, because part of her knew it was true. The stranger's gaze moved to the sealed diary, resting untouched on the pedestal. You have not opened it. Not yet. Good. The word carried relief. Not control. Who are you? She asked again. Names matter less down here. But if you need one, you may call me the Wren Vale. The name meant nothing to her. No memory from books. No whisper from lectures, which somehow made the moment more real. Why me? Erilyn asked quietly. The wren studied her face as if measuring something invisible. Because you understand what it means to be wrong in front of the world, and still keep searching. The truth of it struck deeper than she expected. A place she kept carefully hidden. You watched me, she said. I listened. The wren replied. For years. Anger flickered briefly, then faded, replaced by curiosity stronger than pride. What is this place? A room built to protect a story. Not from time. From power. His eyes rested on the diary again. History remembers kings, victories, borders. But the most dangerous truths are usually written in quiet ink. By people no monument ever thanks. Erilyn stepped closer to the pedestal, drawn by something she could not name. Who wrote it? Someone who sat on the throne above, but was never meant to rule. The words tightened the air between them. Explain. The wren moved slowly along the chamber wall, fingers brushing stone like greeting an old memory. Long before this land carried highways or state lines, there was a small nation here, not large enough for empires to fear, but rich in something rarer. Listening. Its rulers were chosen not by blood, but by the ability to hear the needs of ordinary people. Farmers, travelers, children. Voices history usually forgets. For a time, peace lasted, but peace attracts hunger. Soon larger powers noticed, and they wanted control, not partnership. Erilyn felt the familiar rhythm of history unfolding. Ambition, expansion, silence. So they placed someone on the throne. The wren continued. Someone easy to guide, easy to command. But the person they chose was not empty. He looked at Erilyn with quiet intensity. She listened. The single word shifted everything. She. Erilyn repeated softly. Yes. A ruler history erased. Because obedience was expected. And conscience became dangerous. The chamber felt colder. What happened to her? Theron's voice lowered. She discovered a truth powerful enough to end every throne around her. Not just this one. All of them. Power built on fear. Borders drawn through lies. Wars started to protect pride instead of people. If the truth spread, empires would fracture. So they silenced her. Publicly forgotten. Privately buried. And the diary. Erilyn whispered. Her final act of resistance. Erilyn looked at the sealed metal edge again. Heart beating slower now. Heavier. Why hide it instead of destroying it? Because even those who feared the truth could not bring themselves to erase it completely. Theron's eyes softened. Some secrets are too honest to kill. So they are buried, waiting for a time when someone might listen without turning it into a weapon. Silence filled the chamber. But it no longer felt empty. It felt full of years pressing close. Why reveal it now? Erilyn asked. Because the world is loud again, and people are forgetting how to listen. The wren met her gaze directly. And because time is running out for me. The meaning settled slowly. You protected this place. For most of my life. Alone. Yes. The word carried no pride. Only quiet truth. Erilyn felt something shift inside her. Respect mixed with sadness. Why not open it yourself? The wren smiled faintly. Almost amused. Guardians are rarely meant to be messengers. He nodded toward the diary. Stories change when the wrong voice tells them. The responsibility in the air became almost physical. I might fail again. Erilyn said quietly. Yes. The wren answered gently. You might. The honesty surprised her. Then why trust me? Because you know failure already. And people who know failure sometimes choose truth over applause. The words settled deep, finding places she kept hidden even from herself. Silence returned, but now it felt like a doorway instead of an ending. Erilyn looked down at her hands, still dusty from the earth above, still trembling slightly. If I open it, there is no going back. No. The wren said softly. There is not. Another long breath passed between them. Then a distant sound rolled faintly through the stone. So soft it almost felt imagined. Erilyn turned toward the staircase. Did you hear that? Theron's expression changed for the first time. Not fear, but urgency. Yes. What is it? He did not answer immediately. Which was answer enough. Others have searched for this place. For many years. Cold realization spread through her chest. They followed me. Not you. The wren said quietly. The truth. The faint sound came again. Closer now. Metal against stone. Distant voices carried by the stairwell. Time had finally caught up. Erilyn looked back at the diary. at the unbroken seal waiting between past and future. What happens if they take it? Theron's voice was almost a whisper. Then the truth becomes another tool, another weapon, another story shaped by power instead of conscience. The footsteps above multiplied. No longer careful, no longer patient. A choice stood in the center of the chamber. Silent, unavoidable. Erilyn felt fear rise. But beneath it, something steadier. The same quiet determination that kept her searching after the world turned away. She reached toward the diary again, fingers brushing the cold metal seal for the first time. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. The wren watched without speaking, as if this moment had lived in his memory for decades. Voices echoed clearly now from the staircase, close enough to feel. Erilyn closed her eyes briefly, not in doubt, in acceptance. Then she opened them, and began to break the seal. Tell me when you are ready for part 3, where the truth inside the diary begins to change everything. The metal seal did not break loudly. It released with a soft, fragile sound, like something ancient finally exhaling after centuries of silence. For a moment nothing in the chamber moved. Not the air, not the light, not even breath. Erilyn felt the weight of the small motion travel through her hands and into her chest. A quiet knowing that the world above the stone ceiling was already different, even if no one there understood why. Behind her the voices in the staircase grew clearer. Boots against stone. Low command spoken with controlled urgency. People who believed they were close to something valuable. But the sound felt distant now, muted by the deeper gravity of the diary resting open in her hands. The cover lifted slowly, dust sliding in thin lines along the metal edge. Pages revealed beneath, yellowed but unbroken. Ink still dark as if written yesterday instead of centuries ago. She expected symbols she could not read. A lost language. A puzzle meant only for scholars. Instead the words were simple, clear, written in careful, steady lines. The first page held only one sentence. If you are reading this, then silence has failed. Erilyn felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. Not from fear. From the strange intimacy of a voice reaching across centuries to meet her alone in the dark. She turned the page. The writing continued in the same calm hand. Not dramatic. Not pleading. Just honest. I was not meant to sit on the throne. I was chosen because they believed I would obey. Because they believed listening was weakness. The wren stood very still beside her, as if even memory did not dare interrupt. I listened anyway. The diary said. I listened to mothers who buried sons from wars they never understood. To farmers whose water was taken to feed distant cities. To children who asked why power always spoke louder than kindness. The words carried no anger, only quiet sorrow. Erilyn felt something inside her begin to shift. A slow rearranging of thoughts she had carried for years. Ideas about history, failure, truth. Another sound echoed from the staircase. Closer now. A sharp beam of artificial light flickering against the upper wall. Time was thinning. She kept reading. They told me peace requires sacrifice. But sacrifice always belonged to the powerless, never to the throne. I began to ask questions. And questions are dangerous when power fears answers. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from weakness. From recognition. Because she knew what it meant to ask questions the world did not want. She turned another page. I discovered the borders we defended were drawn from lies. Agreements forged in secret. Wars begun to protect pride rather than people. Truth hidden so deeply that even kings believed the stories they were told. The chamber felt smaller, air heavier, as if the past itself pressed close to hear its own confession. Behind them a voice shouted from the staircase. Not words she could understand, just urgency. Theron's gaze lifted briefly toward the sound, then returned to the diary. Steady, accepting. Erilyn continued. If the truth were spoken aloud, thrones would fall, not through violence, but through awakening. And awakening is what power fears most. Her breathing slowed. each sentence landing like a quiet stone in deep water. She realized something then. This was not only history. It was warning. Another page. They asked me to sign a decree. One war to secure peace for generations. One lie to protect the kingdom. One silence to keep order. I refused. The ink pressed deeper into the page there. Not messy, but firm. Certain. So they prepared another ruler. One who would obey. I was given two choices. Disappear quietly, or watch my people suffer for my defiance. Erilyn's chest tightened, because she already felt the ending approaching, and it did not feel victorious. Footsteps reached the lower staircase now, echoing directly into the chamber. Voices sharper, closer. Light brushed faintly across the ceiling above the stairs. The wren spoke softly for the first time in many minutes. Keep reading. His voice carried urgency but also peace, like someone who had waited his entire life for these words to live again. She turned the page. I chose disappearance, not to save myself, but to leave behind a truth they could not control. If you hold this diary, know this. Power survives by convincing ordinary people they are small. That change belongs only to rulers. That history is written far above their lives. This is the oldest lie. The next line was written darker than the rest. Listening is stronger than ruling. Erilyn felt tears gather without warning. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Like something inside her finally understood. Because for years she believed her failure meant her voice no longer mattered. But this voice from the past spoke directly into that wound. The staircase filled with moving light now. Shadows stretching along the chamber walls. A command echoed. Clear. Demanding. The wren stepped slightly between the staircase and Erilyn. Not aggressive. Simply present. She kept reading faster. But the words themselves felt calm. Unhurried by danger. I do not know your name. The diary said. But I know this. You were not chosen by accident. Truth waits for those who have lost enough to hear it clearly. If you reveal these words, you may be ignored, mocked, or erased. But silence is the only true defeat. Her vision blurred briefly. She blinked hard, forcing herself to continue. The final page approached. Voices were now only steps away. Metal clicking. Equipment shifting. People certain they were about to claim something important. Erilyn reached the last written lines. Do not protect my story. Live it. Listen before you speak. Question before you obey. And when the world tells you truth is powerless, remember, every empire in history feared a single honest voice. The writing ended there. No signature. No farewell. Just empty space where centuries had waited. Erilyn lowered the diary slowly. Heart beating not faster, but deeper, as if something inside her had awakened and refused to sleep again. For a moment she forgot the footsteps, forgot the danger, forgot everything except the quiet certainty growing in her chest. Then a harsh white beam of light flooded the chamber. Voices filled the room. Sharp, commanding, used to control. There they are. The wren did not move, did not raise his hands, only stood beside her like a final piece of the past refusing to disappear. Erilyn felt fear return. Cold and immediate. But beneath it, something stronger remained. The truth she had just read. Still warm in her hands. One of the figures stepped forward. Face hidden behind shadow and light. Give us the book. Not shouted. Simply expected. Erilyn's fingers tightened around the diary. Pulse loud in her ears. She looked at the wren. He met her gaze with quiet calm. No instructions. No rescue. Only trust. The choice was hers now. Outside this chamber, the world continued as it always had. Cities glowing. People arguing. History repeating familiar patterns. But inside this small circle of stone, everything balanced on a single decision. The figure stepped closer. You do not understand what that is, they said. Erilyn felt the words rise inside her before she could stop them. Yes. She whispered. I do. Silence followed. Tense. Fragile. Because for the first time in years, she was not afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of staying silent. And somewhere deep beneath the forgotten throne, a new story waited to begin. Tell me when you are ready for part 4, where the final choice reshapes the future. The white light filled the chamber until shadows disappeared. Stone walls that had guarded silence for centuries now stood exposed. Every crack visible. Every grain of dust awake in the air. Erilyn felt the brightness against her eyes. But she did not look down. She did not hide the diary in her hands. The figure closest to her stepped forward slowly. Boots careful on ancient stone. Confidence shaped by years of being obeyed. Others waited behind. Still. Watching. Certain the ending already belonged to them. Give it to us. The figure said again. Voice calm. Practiced. Used to doors opening without resistance. Erilyn heard her own breathing. Steady but deep. Like the moment before cold water touches skin. For years she had avoided moments like this. Moments where choice becomes impossible to ignore. Moments where silence feels safer than truth. But the words from the diary still lived inside her chest. Quiet. Unmoving. Stronger than fear. She tightened her fingers around the worn cover. No. She said softly. The single word did not echo loudly. Yet it changed the air in the room. Like a line drawn where none existed before. The figure paused. Not surprised. Just adjusting. You think this is about courage? They replied. It is about stability. About preventing chaos people are not ready to face. Erilyn felt the old doubt try to return. The familiar whisper that maybe she misunderstood. Maybe truth was dangerous. Maybe silence protected more than it harmed. But another memory rose instead. The sentence written in steady ancient ink. Listening is stronger than ruling. Her voice remained quiet, but certain. People deserve to hear it. A faint shift moved through the group behind the light. Not disagreement. Just tension. Like a structure feeling its first crack. The figure's tone cooled slightly. History is fragile. Truth without control becomes destruction. The wren spoke then. For the first time since the chamber filled. No. He said gently. Control without truth becomes tyranny. Silence followed his words. Heavy. Unwelcome. The figure turned toward him. Recognition flickering beneath authority. You protected this place for nothing. The figure said. Theron's expression held no regret. Nothing. He answered softly. Is another word for hope. Erilyn felt emotion rise suddenly in her throat. Unexpected. Sharp. Because she understood how long one life must feel to guard a secret alone. The figure looked back at her. You cannot leave here with that diary. There are larger consequences than you understand. Erilyn considered the sentence carefully. Not rejecting it. Not accepting it. Maybe. She said. But silence already had consequences. We are living inside them. For a moment nobody moved. Dust drifted slowly through the white beam of light, turning the air itself into something visible. Something fragile. Then one of the people behind the figure stepped forward. Younger. Uncertain. Voice quieter than the rest. What does it say? The question felt small. But it changed everything. Because curiosity had entered the room. And curiosity does not obey power for long. The leading figure did not answer. Which was answer enough. Erilyn looked at the younger voice. Then at the others. Faces hidden by brightness. Yet suddenly human instead of distant. She opened the diary again. Hands no longer trembling. The wren watched her. Eyes calm. As if this moment was the one he had guarded through every lonely year. Erilyn spoke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just clearly. She read the first lines. Slow. Steady. Letting each word exist fully in the air. If you are reading this, then silence has failed. The chamber listened. Even the people who came to take the book. Even the ones trained not to listen. She continued reading. page after page. Voice growing stronger not through volume, but through truth. Words about mothers and wars, about borders and lies, about power asking sacrifice only from the powerless. No one interrupted. Because honesty has a strange gravity. It holds attention without force. The white lights felt less harsh now. Almost ordinary. Like tools instead of weapons. When she reached the final lines, her voice softened. Listening is stronger than ruling. The sentence rested in the air. Simple. Unbreakable. Silence followed. But it was no longer the old silence of secrecy. It was the silence of people thinking. The most dangerous silence power can face. The leading figure exhaled slowly. Something heavy leaving their certainty. If this spreads, they said quietly, nothing will remain the same. Erilyn closed the diary gently. Maybe that is the point. No anger. No triumph. Just truth spoken without decoration. Minutes passed. Or maybe only seconds. Time felt different inside the chamber. Then something unexpected happened. The younger voice stepped back. Lowered the light slightly. Not surrender. But not control either. Others followed. Small movements. Unplanned. Human. The leading figure watched them. Understanding shifting too late to stop it. Their shoulders relaxed for the first time. A lifetime of tension loosening in one quiet breath. Erilyn felt tears on her face. She had not noticed them begin. Not sadness. Not relief. Something deeper. Like witnessing the exact moment history chooses a different path. No victory music. No grand gesture. Just people standing in stone light. Realizing truth had already changed them. The leading figure looked at Erilyn once more. What will you do now? The question carried no command. Only uncertainty. Erilyn thought about highways. Dinners. Years of running from failure. Years of believing her voice no longer mattered. Then she thought about the ruler who listened. Who disappeared so truth could survive. She answered simply. I will tell it. Carefully. Honestly. Without turning it into power. The wren smiled. Small. Peaceful. Like sunrise after a very long night. Good. He whispered. The word felt like completion. Above them, the world continued turning, unaware that something quiet had shifted beneath forgotten stone. But change rarely begins where crowds are watching. It begins in small rooms, with uncertain voices, choosing honesty instead of silence. The wren sat slowly on the lowest step of the staircase, energy fading now that purpose was fulfilled. Erilyn knelt beside him, concern rising. Are you hurt? He shook his head gently. Just finished. The simplicity of the words broke something open in her chest. Thank you, she said. For waiting. Theron's eyes closed halfway. Peaceful. Someone had to listen first. His breathing slowed. Calm. Unafraid. And in the quiet chamber beneath the forgotten throne, the long watch finally ended. Erilyn remained beside him for a long time. Holding the diary. Holding the silence. Holding the beginning of a responsibility larger than fear. No one rushed her. No one tried to take the book. Because something invisible had already changed ownership. Not the diary. The truth inside it. Eventually she stood, looking once more at the chamber. The pedestal. The staircase leading back to open sky. Nothing looked different. Yet everything was. She turned toward the light above. Diary held close. Heart steady. And began the long walk upward. Out of secrecy. Into a world that did not yet know it was about to remember how to listen. The wind still moved across the empty plain. Soft. Patient. Carrying dust through broken stones where a throne once stood. But silence there was no longer empty. Somewhere within it, a voice had awakened. And this time, it would not disappear. END. If you would like, I can now create the full YouTube title, description, thumbnail text and viewer retention hooks for this story. Morning arrived slowly over the desert. Not with sudden color, but with a quiet widening of light across the horizon. The broken stones of the forgotten throne warmed first, then the drifting sand, then the narrow path where a faded blue truck waited in silence. Erilyn stepped out from beneath the hidden staircase carrying the diary close to her chest, wrapped now in a plain cloth taken from her bag, not to hide it from the world, but to protect the fragile pages from careless wind. Behind her, the entrance was sealed again, stone resting perfectly in place, as if the earth itself had chosen to guard the past once more. Nothing marked what had happened below. No sign of voices. No sign of choice. No sign that history had shifted during the night. Only the wind remained, moving softly across the empty plain, carrying grains of sand like whispers that refused to disappear. She stood there for a long moment, breathing air that felt different from the air she remembered yesterday. Lighter, yet heavier with meaning. The world looked the same, but she did not. Grief moved through her quietly when she thought of the wren. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just a steady ache shaped like gratitude. A life spent waiting, guarding, believing someone would come who could listen without turning truth into noise. And now the waiting was over, which meant the responsibility had begun. She walked to the truck slowly, each step careful, as if rushing might break the fragile certainty forming inside her. The engine started with its usual rough shake, a familiar sound from a life that suddenly felt very far away. For years this truck had carried her from one forgotten place to another, searching without direction, running without admitting she was running. Now the road ahead felt different, not clearer, but purposeful. She placed the diary on the passenger seat, one hand resting on it gently, feeling the quiet presence of centuries beneath her fingers. Not power, not treasure, just truth, and the weight of choosing what to do with it. The sun climbed higher as she drove, light stretching across open land, touching distant hills, revealing colors hidden by night. Hours passed in silence. No radio, no music, only the low steady sound of tires on pavement. Thoughts came and went like passing clouds. Who would believe her? Who would try to stop her? How to share the words without letting them be twisted into something loud and empty? She did not have answers yet, only one clear knowing. Silence was no longer possible. Near midday, a small roadside diner appeared beside the highway. Faded sign. 2 parked trucks. Windows glowing with warm yellow light. She almost drove past, habit pulling her forward. Then she slowed, turned, parked. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and toasted bread. A ceiling fan turning lazily above worn tables. Soft conversation between strangers who would never learn each other's names. Ordinary life, unaware of buried chambers or ancient diaries, yet somehow connected to them in ways history rarely explains. She sat at the counter, the diary still wrapped beside her, close enough to feel its presence, hidden enough to remain private. The waitress poured coffee without asking, a small kindness offered every day to passing travelers. Long road, the waitress said gently. Erilyn nodded. Yes, for the first time in years. The simple word did not feel heavy, just true. She watched sunlight move across the floor, listened to quiet conversation, noticed how ordinary moments carried a kind of peace no throne had ever held. Listening is stronger than ruling. The sentence returned softly. No longer just ink on paper. Now something alive inside her choices. She finished the coffee slowly, letting time move without pushing it. When she stepped back outside, the sky felt wider than before, as if possibility itself had more space to breathe. She stood beside the truck, looking down the highway stretching toward distant cities, toward noise, toward disbelief, toward the long difficult work of telling truth carefully. Fear tried to return, whispering about failure, about ridicule, about being wrong again in front of the world. But another voice answered quietly. Every empire feared a single honest voice. She exhaled, long, steady. Then she opened the truck door and continued east. Days passed. Miles unfolded. Desert became fields. Fields became towns. Towns slowly gathered into the edges of a city. Billboards rose beside the road. Traffic lights. Crowds moving with urgent ordinary purpose. The world of headlines and arguments waited ahead, unaware that something ancient was traveling toward it in the passenger seat of an aging truck. She did not hurry. Truth carried in haste often becomes noise. And noise was the one thing the diary never asked for. Instead, she planned quietly. Not a grand announcement. Not a spectacle. But a careful sharing. Voices invited to listen rather than react. Historians who still valued honesty. Writers who understood silence. Communities whose stories had been ignored too long. Listening first. Speaking second. Weeks later, in a small room far from cameras, she opened the diary again. A few people sat nearby. Not powerful. Not famous. Just willing to hear. She read the words slowly. The same way she had in the chamber of stone. And the same silence followed. Thoughtful. Uncertain. Alive. No applause. No headlines. Just the beginning of understanding. It spread quietly after that. Not like fire. More like roots beneath soil. Invisible at first. Yet impossible to stop once growing. Articles written with care. Conversations held in classrooms. Communities asking new questions about old stories. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sudden. But change rarely arrives with thunder. It arrives with listening. Months turned into a year. One evening, Erilyn stood on a hillside outside the city, watching sunset color the sky in slow-fading gold. The diary rested safely in an archive nearby. Protected, but no longer hidden. Its words now lived in many voices. Not controlled. Not owned. Free. Wind moved gently through tall grass, carrying the same quiet feeling as the desert plain where everything began. She thought of the wren, of the forgotten ruler, of centuries of silence finally ending. Gratitude filled the space where doubt once lived. Not because the world had transformed completely. It had not. Conflict still existed. Power still argued loudly. History still struggled between truth and comfort. But something small had shifted direction. And small shifts, given time, can change everything. She closed her eyes briefly, listening to the wind, to distant city sounds, to the steady calm inside her own breathing. For the first time in many years, she was not searching. She was exactly where she needed to be. A keeper of a story, not buried beneath stone, but living in the open air of human choice. Night arrived gently, stars appearing one by one above the darkening sky. Somewhere far away, the forgotten throne remained alone in the desert, broken, silent, unmarked, yet no longer empty, because the truth once sealed beneath it, now moved through the world in quiet, invisible ways. And silence, after centuries of power, had finally failed. The wind continued its slow, endless journey across the land, carrying dust, carrying memory, carrying the echo of a single honest voice that refused to disappear, a voice that now belonged, not to the past, but to anyone willing to listen.